In this episode of Highlight Sundays, innovation and creativity. Hello and welcome back to Highlight Sundays. It is the 42nd week of 2014 and here are your highlights. So as always, let us kick off with our PSA of the week. This one comes from Ars Technica and is entitled SSL broken again in POODLE attack. So well, I guess this is the next big thing. POODLE is actually an exploit in an early version of SSL that was actually found by Google. SSL is the tool behind delivering secure web pages, and what this means is basically when you're communicating with a web server, the entire connection is encrypted. And as a result, even if someone actually eavesdrops into this conversation, they will not be able to make any sense out of the information. Now, here's the kicker for this particular exploit. This exploit is actually in an extremely old version of SSL that basically isn't a problem today anymore. In fact, this old version of SSL, which is SSL version 3, is basically not used anywhere and only exists as a fallback if a more modern version of SSL doesn't work for some reason. What this means is essentially this, while scary, isn't a very huge thing to worry about, and in fact, as an end user, there really isn't very much you can do about this, since, well, ultimately it is up to the web server to decide which version of SSL it wants to use. Now, having said that, there are a few things you can do to actually safeguard yourself from any possibility of this attack at all. Firstly, if you're using a very old browser, like, I don't know, Internet Explorer 6 for some reason, well, now would be a good time to upgrade. Now, I mentioned IE6 for a good reason. Apparently, it only supports up to SSL 3, and so if sites start pulling their support for SSL 3 because of this issue, well, basically, if you're using IE6, you cannot access a lot of sites. Of course, that's just by the by, you should be using a better browser like Firefox or Chrome, and if you have an older version, now would be a good time to update it. The update that patches this issue for Firefox isn't actually out yet. However, Mozilla has created an add-on that you can install right now. I will of course link to this in the video description. In doing so, you basically disable support for SSL 3. That means if a server tries to communicate with you via SSL 3, your browser's just gonna reject it. That is of course the ultimate way to stay safe. And that is basically all you can do. The rest is up to the server owners to actually pull support for SSL 3, and in doing so, basically remove all possibility for this particular attack to happen. Alright, let's actually move on to the innovation itself. Our first item is actually a video, and it's apparently a recording of what happened at an Adobe event. Essentially, the issue that they are trying to fix is what I'm going to encounter in a couple of hours time when I actually cut down this video. You see, a lot of times when there's someone in front of a camera trying to say something, chances are they pause or they stutter a lot. And in editing, you're gonna have to, cut out all the stutters and sort of fix everything into a single, easy to understand statement. Traditionally, that's difficult to do. As you can see in this particular video, every time I make a cut, I have to do a little bit of a fade just to make it, feel less jarring, and yet it is still extremely noticeable. What these guys have done is they've actually come up with a special algorithm which basically listens to the pauses and cuts them away. But at the same time, it also kind of smoothly smudges the video from one point to another, and the whole point is to make it look as if no cut has been made. This algorithm works great. In fact, to see it in action, do pop down to the video description, you will find a link to this original video. I feel it's very well done. You cannot actually see any cuts, despite the fact that the overall audio has actually been shortened. So very nicely done, and I'm looking forward to seeing this basically implemented in Adobe products in the future. We move on to our next article from Gizmodo. This one is entitled, "You can customize this e-ink watch down to the strap." Now, for those of you who aren't aware, basically I'm very much into smartwatches, but I haven't really gotten one yet because I feel that the main thing I want from them isn't really a main thing in a lot of them. Now, what am I talking about? Essentially, I'm talking about a customizable watch face. Personally, I can do away with all the other fluff. I don't really need notifications, I don't really need heartbeat monitoring. All I want is the ability to create my own watch face. And I've always felt that, an e-paper display seems to be the better way to go, mainly because, well, essentially the screen stays on all the time, and even as it does so, it isn't drawing additional battery. Now, the watch actually mentioned in this article seems to check everything on my list and more. Essentially, the entire watch, down to the strap, is actually e-paper. And as a result, you can actually customize everything from the watch face up to the straps itself. Now, unfortunately, the demo video linked in this article is entirely in Japanese, and the video itself doesn't actually have English closed captions. I mean, you can do a Google Translate from the Japanese subtitles, but it's kinda hard to understand the results. So unfortunately, I can't give you too much information about this apart from what Gizmodo has reported in the article. There is no information about the price just yet, or a very rigorous showing of what features this watch actually has. All we know is it's apparently gonna go on sale next year in May. So yeah, I'll be following the progress of this watch very carefully, and if it looks interesting enough, I might think about laying my hands on one. I know I've said this about pretty much every smartwatch that has been announced so far, but yeah, I'm just looking for something that actually works for me. Moving on, our next article comes from Mashable and is entitled, "New battery said to recharge in minutes and last 20 years." Now, important information to point out right off the bat. No, recharging it does not make it last for 20 years on the same charge. That would be, a little bit further off than we think. But essentially, the whole idea is lithium-ion batteries these days have a limited number of recharge cycles. In fact, according to what I've read, lithium-ion batteries these days can only be recharged from 500 to 1,000 times. And in retrospect, that is actually very little. However, this particular battery technology promises 10,000 recharge cycles, which is a lot more. And that is where the figure 20 years comes from. One particular reason why I picked this article is also because this development is happening right here in Singapore. In fact, it's happening at one of the universities, not the one I'm going to, but that's fine. By the looks of things, the promised application is in electric cars, but of course, if this actually becomes a reality, I don't see why this cannot be put into electronic devices as we know today. So yeah, definitely a very interesting prospect. Apparently it charges real quick as well, so that's great. I mean, we could always use that. Unfortunately, every time we hear about something battery related, it doesn't seem to go very far, so hopefully that's not the case for this particular project. Alright, our last innovation today is also an article from Gizmodo, and it's entitled, "New time-lapse technique bends the space-time fabric." Now, you know how the typical time-lapse works. Essentially, you just set up a camera, make it take pictures at certain intervals, and string all the pictures together into one video. The result you get is an extremely sped up version of everything that is happening at the scene. Now, the artist featured in this article actually decided to take things one step further. After shooting a time-lapse, essentially what they've done is they've cut out the various elements of the scene and basically set them to go at different speeds. What this means now is that different parts of the scene actually animate at different speeds, and what you can see is a trippy little effect of, something's going really fast and something's going at a more or less normal speed. Definitely a very cool idea, and I love the fact that, the concept of time lapses can still be innovated on. I mean, recently we've seen hyperlapses, which is also a very interesting take on the concept of a time lapse, and so is this. Very awesome to see, just creativity and innovation. This technique has been dubbed layer lapse, and well, if you want to see more of layer lapses, you can actually pop down to the video description and check out this article, which contains a video link. And that basically wraps it up for this episode of Highlight Sundays. Now, I just want to very quickly apologize for, the sporadic episodes of Highlight Sundays. Sometimes you get an express episode, and sometimes you kinda don't get anything at all. Of course, this is the time of the school year when the work starts piling on, and well, that is basically why. I found some time this week to actually, get in front of the camera again, but I cannot say if I'll have the time to do the same in the coming weeks. So yeah, I'll do whatever I can. At least I'll try to come up with, the express episodes. As of right now, the express episodes still take longer to do than these episodes, so that's something that needs looking into. But yeah, basically that is all there is for this episode of Highlight Sundays. Thank you very much for watching, and until next time, you're watching 0612 TV. Hello! If you enjoyed this video, don't forget I appreciate every like, favorite, and comment you give me. If you'd like to see more from me in the future, don't forget to subscribe. For more updates outside of YouTube, do follow my official Twitter account at 0612 TV. And if you'd like to see more of my work, you can also check out my About Me page. Once again, thank you very much for watching, and until next time, you're watching 0612 TV.